The materials required are 1 skein or ball of Red Heart Super Saver Turqua yarn, or you can make it in another colour if you like. This is a medium worsted weight yarn. It's a category 4. So this is the colour that I've chosen. So if you don't have this colour, you can use any Red Heart Super Saver. Now with that yarn, I've used a 6.5mm hook, also known as a USK 10.5, and this is a Susan Bates crochet hook. You'll also need your craft scissors and a yarn needle. Now here is the hat when it's off the head, and it looks kind of a bit odd and very different to what it looks like on the head. Now we'll be starting off with the crown, and the crown is this circular part of the hat, and we'll be starting in the middle here. So we'll be starting off by using the magic ring. Now I'm aware that not everybody knows how to make a magic ring, so I'll show you how to do that. So getting your end of the yarn and place it over those 2 fingers, and then you're going to wrap it over like that. So you're making sort of like a cross, and just hold that end of the yarn there, or the working end of the yarn there. And then we're going to pop up under here, and then bring this one through like that, and take your fingers out, and there's our ring that we'll be working with. So as you can see, when we work into the ring, we'll be working over that tail. So to get started for round 1, we'll be doing a chain 2, so 2 chain stitches, 1, and with the second chain stitch just make it a little looser than normal, because we're coming around. When we come around towards the end here, we need to join into it. It's just easier if you make it a little bit bigger, because then it's easy to get your hook into to join the round. So we've done 2 chain stitches, and now we're going to do 15 double crochet stitches into the ring. This chain 2 does count as 1 double crochet stitch. So we've actually got 2 stitches now, 2 double crochet stitches. But even though we've made the chain 2 at the start, we're still doing 15 of these double crochet stitches into the ring. So I've done 2 double crochets, there's my third. Now if you find that your ring is too big, just give the tail a little pull, and it's easy to work with. So continue on making your double crochet stitches into the ring until you have 15, and then I'll see you at the end here. So now I've made my 15 double crochet stitches into the ring, and I am up to joining with a slip stitch into this chain 2 here. See, there's the first chain stitch, and here's the second chain stitch. So we want to make a slip stitch into that chain. Now if you're having trouble getting in there, you can always pop it through the first loop and then slide the second loop over. Grabbing your working end of the yarn and make a slip stitch. And that's the end of round 1. So at this point I take my hook out, flip it over, and we're going to pull on this tail, the centre tail, to tighten up the centre. So that we don't have a big hole. And now we're going to get our yarn needle and weave this, or thread this end into your yarn needle. And we're going to weave this in, just to tighten the centre even more. And now you're going to skip a stitch here and go back the way we just came. And that just makes it really secure, so that that end isn't going to pop out at any stage. And then you can cut that off, and that's out of the way. You don't need to do that later. There we go. We have a tight centre. Now we need to pop our hook back in that loop. And now we're up to round 2. So we'll chain 2, 1, and remember to make the second chain stitch just a little bit longer, a little bit bigger, so it's easier to place your hook into at the end of the round. So now we're going to start a repetitive sequence. So So we're going to do 2 double crochet stitches into this next stitch here. There's one, and into the same stitch a second double crochet. Now the next part of the repetitive sequence is 1 double crochet into the next stitch. So you're going to repeat that sequence right around to the last stitch. So the repetitive sequence again is 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into the next stitch, repeating that right around up until your last stitch, and I'll see you there for that one. I'm up to making my last stitches into this last stitch here on round 2. So we're going to do 2 double crochet stitches into this last stitch. There's one, and a second one into that same stitch. And now we're going to join into the top of the chain 2. So there's the first chain, and there's the chain 2 that we want to do a slip stitch into. And because we've made it a little bit bigger, it's easier to just slip your hook through. So making a slip stitch, and that's the end of round 2. So at the end of round 2 you should have 24 stitches. Now we're up to round 3, and we'll start off with a chain 2. So 2 chain stitches. There's the first one, and we're going to make the second chain stitch just a little bit longer. And now we'll start a repetitive sequence. So 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch, this one here. There's one, and into the same stitch do a second double crochet. The next part of the repetitive sequence is 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So 1 double crochet here and 1 double crochet in here. So that's the sequence that you're going to repeat right around up until the last 2 stitches. So the repetitive sequence again is 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch, and then 1 double crochet stitch into each of the next 2 stitches. So you repeat that right around up until the last 2 stitches here, and then I'll see you here. Alright, so I am still on round 3 and I've got 2 stitches left here. In the next stitch we're going to do 2 double crochet stitches into that stitch. There's 1, and there's 2. And into this last stitch we'll do 1 double crochet. And now we're ready to join into the top of this chain 2. So there's the first chain and here's the second. So we're going to make a slip stitch into that second chain. So pop your hook in under that chain stitch, and make your slip stitch, and that's the end of round 3. And at the end of round 3 you'll have 32 stitches. Now we're up to round 4 and we'll start off with a chain 2. So there's our first chain stitch, and just make our second chain stitch a little bit bigger. We'll be starting a repetitive sequence and we'll be doing 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch here. There's our first one, and we'll do a second double crochet into the same stitch. For the next part of the repetitive sequence we'll do 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So 1 double crochet there, there and there. So that's the repetitive sequence you'll use right around. So once again, that sequence is 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Now you continue to do that right around up until these last 3 stitches here, and I'll see you here. Okay, so I'm still on round 4 and I have 1, 2, 3 stitches left. So in this next stitch here we'll be doing 2 double crochet stitches into the same stitch. There's 1 into the same stitch, do a second one. Into the next stitch we'll do 1 double crochet, and into the next stitch 1 double crochet. And now we're ready to join the round. So we're going to join with a slip stitch into the top of this chain 2 here. So that's the end of round 4. And at the end of round 4 you should have 40 stitches. So now we're up to round 5. So to start round 5 we'll chain 2. So there's our first chain stitch, and we're going to make our second chain stitch just a little bit longer, a little bit bigger. We'll be starting a repetitive sequence, and it starts off with 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch here, this one. There's our first double crochet, and now we'll do a second one into that same stitch. Now the next part of the repetitive sequence is 1 double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So 1 double crochet in this stitch, one in the next stitch, one in the next stitch, and a double crochet into the next stitch. So you're going to repeat that sequence right around up until the last 4 stitches. So the repetitive sequence is 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch, and then 1 double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches, repeating that right around up until the last 4 stitches. So I'll see you there. So I'm still on round 5, and I have 4 stitches left here. So into the next stitch we'll be doing 2 double crochet stitches. There's our first one, and into the same stitch make a second double crochet. Into the next stitch 1 double crochet. Into the next stitch 1 double crochet, and into the next stitch 1 double crochet. And now we're ready to join into the top of this chain 2. By making a slip stitch. So that's the end of round 5. At the end of round 5 you should have 48 stitches. Now we're up to round 6. So start off with a chain 2 and making the second chain a little bit longer. And we're starting a repetitive sequence, so we'll do 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch. There's our first one, and we'll do a second one into the same stitch. Now the second part of the repetitive sequence is 1 double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. So 1 double crochet into the next stitch. One double crochet into the next stitch, same again, got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 double crochet into the next stitch, making it 5. So that repetitive sequence again is 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch and 1 double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. So you repeat that right around up until your last 5 stitches, and then I'll see you here. So I'm still on round 6 and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches left. So in this next stitch here we're going to do 2 double crochet stitches. 1, 2. In the next stitch, 1 double crochet. In the next stitch, 1 double crochet. Into the next stitch, 1 double crochet. Into the next stitch, 1 double crochet. And now we're ready to join the round. So we're going to join into the top of the chain 2. Just slipping your hook under the top of that chain 2. And we're going to make a slip stitch, so at the end of round 6 you should have 56 stitches. Now at this point, if you're wanting a small to medium size hat, then you'll skip the next round, which is round 7, and you'll move on to round 8 and you'll follow the rest of the pattern. Now for a medium to large size, you'll continue on with the next round, which is round 7, and you'll follow the rest of the pattern. So for round 7, we'll start off with a chain 2, making our second chain stitch a little bit bigger. Now the repetitive sequence for this round is 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch. There's one, and make a second one into the same stitch. And the second part of the repetitive sequence is 1 double crochet into each of the next 6 stitches along. So 1 double crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. That should be 6 there. So we did our 2 there, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the repetitive sequence you'll need to do right around. So once again, that repetitive sequence is 2 double crochet stitches into the next stitch, and then 1 double crochet into each of the next 6 stitches along. Repeating that right around up until the last 6 stitches here. Now I'll meet you there. I'm still on round 7 and I have 6 stitches left here. So into this next stitch here we'll do 2 double crochet stitches. There's the first one, and we're making a second double crochet into that same stitch. Into the next stitch, 1 double crochet. To the next stitch, 1 double crochet. The same again. Into the next stitch, 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and 1 double crochet into the last stitch here. Now we're going to join into the top of the chain 2 here. So slip your hook up under the chain 2 and make a slip stitch. And that completes round 7. So at the end of round 7 you should have 64 stitches, and we've completed the crown, and now we'll be working on the sides. So now we'll be starting round 8. So we'll start off with a chain 2, 1, and just make the chain 2 a little bit bigger. Into the next stitch we'll do 1 double crochet. Now we'll be doing a front post double crochet around each post of these next 2 stitches. And this is how you do a front post double crochet. So you're doing a double crochet around the post or the body of the stitch. So now we need to do a front post double crochet around the post of this stitch. So now we'll be starting a repetitive sequence. So we'll be doing 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. To the next stitch, 1 double crochet. Now the second part of the repetitive sequence is a front post double crochet around each post of the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 front post double crochet, and now we need to do 1 in the next one. So you're going to repeat that repetitive sequence right around to the end. So it's 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and then a front post double crochet around each post of the next 2 stitches. And repeating that right around to the end, and I'll see you there. I'm at the end of round 8, and now we're going to join into the top of the chain 2. And make a slip stitch to finish this round. So that's what it's looking like now. See, the front post double crochets bring out that ribbed look, and the double crochets sit back. So at the end of round 8, you'll have 64 stitches still. That's if you're making the large size. If you're making the smaller to medium size, then you'll still have 56 stitches. Now for rounds 9 to 18, you'll need to repeat round 8, which was the round that we just did there. And you'll have the same amount of stitches. So if you're doing the small to medium size, you'll have 56 stitches at the end of each round for rounds 9 to 18. If you're making the medium to large size, for rounds 9 to 18, at the end of each round you'll have 64 stitches still. Okay, so I'll see you at the end of round 18. I've just finished round 18, so this is what the hat will be looking like now. So now we'll be starting the brim. So for round 19, we'll start off with a chain 1. So 1 chain stitch. And then we'll be doing 1 single crochet into the same space as the join, which is right in there. There's our first single crochet stitch. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So 1 single crochet into that stitch, and then 1 single crochet into the next stitch. Into the next stitch we'll be doing 2 single crochet stitches. There's 1 single crochet, and into the same stitch a second single crochet. And now we'll be starting a repetitive sequence. So the start is 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. There's 1 into the next stitch. And into the next stitch. So we've done 3 single crochet stitches. The second part of the sequence is 2 single crochet stitches into the next stitch. There's 1, and into the same stitch, the second single crochet. So you're going to repeat this sequence right around until you get to the end here. So that repetitive sequence again is 1 single crochet stitch into each of the next 3 stitches, and then 2 single crochet into the next stitch, repeating that sequence right around to the end. And I'll see you there. I'm at the end of round 19, so I just made my last 2 single crochet stitches into that last stitch there. And now we're going to join into this first single crochet by making a slip stitch. that's the end of round 19. So for round 20, we'll start off with a chain 1, and then we're going to do a single crochet into the same space as the join. So in here. So there's our first single crochet. So now we're going to do one single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. There's one to the next stitch, that's 2 into the next stitch, and 3. So there. Now into the next stitch we'll do 2 single crochet stitches. 1 into the same stitch, a second single crochet. Now we'll be starting a repetitive sequence. So the repetitive sequence starts off with 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. There's 1 to the next stitch, 2 into the next stitch, 3 into the next stitch, 4. So we've made our 4 single crochet. The second part of the repetitive sequence is 2 single crochet stitches into the next stitch. So here's our first single crochet. Into the same stitch, do a second single crochet stitch. Now that's going to be the sequence that you're going to repeat right around to the end. So the repetitive sequence once again is 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches, and then 2 single crochet stitches into the next stitch. So once you've repeated that right around to the end, I'll see you there. I'm now at the end of round 20, and I've made my last 2 single crochet stitches into the last stitch there. So now we're going to join into this first single crochet. We're joining with a slip stitch. That's the end of round 20. So to start round 21, we'll chain 1, and we'll do 1 single crochet into the same space as the join. So there's our first single crochet stitch. Now we'll do 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. There's 1 into the next stitch, 2 into the next stitch, 3 into the next stitch, 4. Now into the next stitch we'll do 2 single crochet stitches into that same stitch. There's our first single crochet, and into the same stitch make a second single crochet. So now we'll start off with a repetitive sequence, and it starts off with 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. One into the next stitch, 2 into the next stitch, 3 into the next stitch, 4 into the next stitch, 5. And the second part of the repetitive sequence is 2 single crochet stitches into the next stitch. So there's our first single crochet. And 2. So now you'll need to repeat that repetitive sequence right around to the end. So once again, that sequence is 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, and then 2 single crochet stitches into the next stitch. So repeating that right around until you get to the end here, and I'll see you there. I'm at the end of round 21, and I've just made my last 2 single crochet stitches into the last stitch there. So now we're going to join into the first single crochet stitch by making a slip stitch. And that's the end of round 21. So for round 22, we'll start off with a chain 1 and 1 single crochet into the same space as the join. So there's our first single crochet stitch. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. There's 1 into the next stitch, 2 into the next stitch, 3 into the next stitch, 4 into the next stitch, 5 single crochet stitches. Now into the next stitch here we'll do 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. So there's 1 into the same stitch, a second single crochet. So now we'll start a repetitive sequence, and the first part is 1 single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1 single crochet into each of those stitches. There's 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the next part of the repetitive sequence is 2 single crochet stitches into the next stitch. There's our first one, and then we need to make a second crochet into that same stitch. So that's the repetitive sequence you'll follow right around to the end. So that sequence again is 1 single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches, and then 2 single crochet stitches into the next stitch, repeating that right around to the end, and then I will see you there. Now I'm at the end of round 22, and I've made my last 2 single crochet stitches in that last stitch there. So now we need to join into the first single crochet stitch here by making a slip stitch, and that's the end of round 22. So now just leaving a good sized tail there, and you can cut that and finish off. So now you'll need your yarn needle, and thread the yarn tail through the yarn needle, and we're going to weave this end in through here. So where you can see your knot there, just take it down through the middle of the next stitch, and we're going to take it right down. Just hold that there because you don't want this to pull in tight here. You just want it, because if you pull too tight then you're going to get a big dip there. So we can take this down a little further, and then turn it, and then we're going to just weave along that row. And we're going to try and hide it as well as we can, because at the back we actually fold it up when it's worn. On the head, the back part is folded up. So try and make this as neat and hide it well. So now you can cut that off. And we've finished the hat.